Hey team, hope you guys are doing well and enjoying your day. Welcome to Bible ABCs. We're almost to the end, but we're not there yet. So get ready. And before I reveal the exciting letter of the day, that is you, we gotta review. That's how we learn. Hit it, Jade! Alrighty. A for Aaron. B for Bible. C for Christ. D for David. E for eyes. F for 40, a biblical number. G was for Galilee. There's a C there. H was for Hannah. I, idols. J, Joseph. K, kindness. L, lepers. M was for Mark. N was for Nineveh. All the way to the end. O was for olives. P was for prayer. Q was for Queen Esther. R was for running a race. S was for Samson and his braids. And then last week we did T for Trinity. And we talked about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, all three entities of God, and a way for us to kind of picture that as parts of a clover. So here we are, all the way to the vowel that is you. Told you guys I knew exactly what we would be doing today, and so this was a really fun lesson to prepare. I mean, they've all been fun, but so today we're going to talk about you for the upper room. Did you see that coming? So it's kind of a place, but not like Galilee is a place. It's not a city or anything, but it's a place inside of a home that was very significant. And we're going to talk about why it was significant and who was in there and what happened. So buckle up. We're about to go back in time. I guess with Bible stories, you always go back in time, right? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to tease it out, talking about the upper room. We're going to talk about where it was, when it happened, who, and then what it all means, all that good stuff. So we're gonna jump on in. So let's talk about where. So the upper room is just that, an upper room. So the Bible tells us that, so our story is taking place, it takes place in all four of the Gospels, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And this is right before Jesus' crucifixion. So this is his last meal on earth. And so this is a Passover meal. We'll talk a little bit more about what that is in just a second. But in order to eat a meal, you have to have a place to do that. And so having a Passover meal, celebrating Passover, is something that Jews do every single year. And so it was getting to that time of the year for Jesus and the disciples. And so they had to start thinking about where they would do it. And so in the Gospels, in a couple of them, Jesus says, I want you to go into town. There's going to be a man. He's going to be carrying water, and tell him that we're ready to have the meal in his upper room. So I want you guys to picture this event is taking place in a house on the second story. Bible doesn't say exactly what story it is, but you can picture an upper room inside of a house. So that's going to be where. And also, if we want to think about city, this is happening in the city of Jerusalem. The Bible also, during this part, talks about Bethany and things like that. We also talk about the Mount of Olives, but so here's going to be the where, the upper room. So picture, could have looked like an attic maybe. It could have just been kind of like a larger gathering space, because I'm about to tell you who all's in there, so we kind of need to picture a substantial space. But it's in someone's home, okay? So that's going to be where the upper room physically is, right? So let's talk about when, and when kind of flows into why. So in order to think about that, we have to go all the way back to Exodus. So you guys know that in Exodus, the Jewish people were held captive in Egypt by Pharaoh, and we have that whole beautiful thing where Moses goes in and asks, let my people go, and Pharaoh's like, no, I'm not going to do it. And so subsequently we have all the different plagues, right? The gnats, the river turning to blood, the locusts, all those different plagues coming up. But then the final one was that God was going to kill the firstborn of Egypt's people and their cattle, or all their livestock, right? And so in order to differentiate themselves, so if you're a Jewish person, you wanted to say, I'm I'm a Jewish person, I'm not an Egyptian, so that you wouldn't lose the firstborn of your family and of your animals, you had to have a Passover meal, sacrifice a lamb, and then, this is going to sound a little weird, but sure as shooting, this is what happened. Dip a little dipper thing in the blood of the lamb, and then go all around the doorpost or the door frames of your house. Because what this would signify is that when the Lord, the angel, however it happened, comes through there and takes away the firstborn, he's going to skip over the houses that have the blood on the door, because those will be the Jewish families, the Israelites that are headed out of Egypt. So, so all that to go in to say, this was a significant moment in the history of the Israelites, of the Jews, because this is the point at which they went from being slaves in Egypt to being free people to moving into the promised land, all that stuff that happens in the Old Testament. And so this was a significant moment in their history, and so every year they would commemorate it. And so, fast forward to Jesus' day, it's time to celebrate the Passover and to kind of reaffirm, think about the miraculous thing that God did for his people. Because we know that after this, Pharaoh was like, get out of here. I want you guys out of my sight. So this was the last time, that they were enslaved. Well, they might have been enslaved in Egypt after this, but this is the time that they got out of Egypt with their people, right? So this is what Passover feast is. And I looked online just to check. This year, Passover is already passed. It's in the spring, and it's going to be in March this year. So I looked that up just to see. So we know that the upper room is an upper room in a house. The house is in Jerusalem. We know that when they celebrated, or were celebrating it, because Passover, it's the time to celebrate Passover, eat the Passover meal. So when kind of goes into why this is happening, why they're having a Passover meal, why they need the space to do that. But now we're going to talk about who was in the upper room. So I told you guys they're at a gentleman's house. The Bible doesn't give us his name or the significance of him, but just he gets to be the lucky person who hosts the gathering. But the Bible does tell us that this was a time for Jesus to celebrate the Passover meal with his apostles. So you guys can picture Jesus and his 12 apostles in there having their Passover meal. And it was just that. It was an actual meal. So picture them sitting around a table with all this food, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about what it was in just a minute. But if you're going to have 13 people at least inside of a room, it's going to have to be pretty big. So pop quiz, guys. Can y'all name the 12 apostles? There's a song for it. There's a song for everything. So I'm going to sing you a song now. Okay, ready? It's to a tune you probably already know, but here we go. So Jesus called them one by one, Peter, Andrew, James, and John. Then came Philip, Thomas too, Matthew, and Bartholomew. When we were little, we used to say, I'll barf on you. Don't say that. James, the one they called the last, Simon, also Thaddeus, the 12 apostle Judas made, Jesus was by him betrayed. There you go. 12 apostles and Jesus. I want you to picture all these faces in the upper room. So that's going to be our who. Who is in the upper room? It's Jesus and the apostles. They're sharing the Passover meal in the upper room of this house. Okay, so that brings us to the what. And this is where we're going to put a couple of different pictures up, because there's a lot that happens. And so far you might be thinking, Jay, why are we having a Bible lesson about this? What's so special about it? You just wait. It's coming. You gotta let me build. You gotta let me build to it. So let's talk about, I told you this a second ago, it was a meal to commemorate the Spirit of the Lord passing over the Israelites' houses. So it's actually a meal. So you can picture, again, a big table is going to be in there, Jesus and his apostles. And in one of the Gospels, it talks about them lounging. So they were right next to each other, just kind of enjoying, lounging, eating, and commemorating this meal. So I want you to picture food and maybe all those good smells that go with having a meal with other people, all those different smells. That's going to be happening. Now, one thing that's really important and cool that the book of John mentions is that Jesus washed his apostles' feet. And so you might be thinking like, well, what's the big deal, right? Well, before a meal, we typically wash our hands, right? Because we got cooties. There's also some sort of COVID going on right now, so we're washing a little bit more. But you wash your hands before a meal. So again, if these guys are all kind of lounging around the table is a little bit lower to the floor, you're going to be in close proximity to someone's feet. So washing feet was pretty common back then. But here's the thing. Jesus bent down and washed his apostles' feet. So that's amazing to think about, because you would think that because of who Jesus is, they would be washing his feet. And Peter kind of wrestled with this. He was like, no, I should be washing your feet. And Jesus goes, no, you have to let me do it. Otherwise, you're not going to have any part of me. And then Peter goes in the opposite direction, and he says, okay, we'll wash my head, wash everything. I want everything to be washed. So Peter, he's the pendulum that swings way far one way and then way far back. But this is important to mention that this happens because it is really significant. This is Jesus giving us a beautiful example of how we should treat others, a beautiful example of humility, because even though he is God's son, he's the only perfect person that's ever lived, he is not above acts of service. And that if Jesus does it, then it's absolutely appropriate for us to do it as well. So washing feet happened in the upper room, right? So we got, for the what, we got a meal going on, we got some feet washing, and this is really cool. You guys know, like when we're at church, there's a certain point in the service where we pass around little crackers and little juices, and that's called the Lord's Supper, right? And this is where it comes from, right? After the Passover meal, Jesus has some wine, some fruit of the vine, and some unleavened bread, and he talks about how this is my body, this is my blood, this is the establishment of the new covenant. Do this in my memory. So this is where our Lord's Supper comes from. And this is really significant because if you think about it, they're here for the Passover meal. So they're honoring and commemorating their faith as Jewish folks. And then now Jesus is saying, this is what we're going to do moving forward, though. This is how you're going to remember and reflect me, not every single year, every single week when you meet on the first day of the week, right? And we still do it. Even though we may not be at church doing it all together, we're still doing it in our homes. And so this is where it came from. And all those beautiful verses that we hear usually every week during the time that we do communion, we call it, because we're all together, are all found in the Gospels and tell us about this part. So, the institution of the Lord's Supper. So, that's what's going on as well. So, a full meal, Lord's Supper coming in, and some feet washing. And I'll do that one in just a second. And every story has a villain. So, Jesus had his 12 apostles, and you guys probably already know this. One of them is going to betray him, and that is Judas. Okay, so this is where Judas kind of rises to the surface of the story a little bit. So in a couple of Gospels, right before they sit down for the Lord's Supper and make preparations, there's some verses that talk about Judas going to the high priest and getting money in order to betray Jesus. So one way you can think of Judas is kind of like a really bad spy. So he was on the inside, he was in Jesus's kind of inner circle, but he was setting him up for the people on the outside, for the chief priest. So he wasn't a good guy. But during the Passover meal, in different Gospels, Jesus talks about one who is going to betray him. So Jesus knows that one of these apostles, and he knows who it is going to betray him. And of course, they're all like, oh, it would never be us. And in some Gospels, Jesus points it out that it is Judas. Sometimes he says it's the person who I'm going to dip the bread and the oil, dip it in together when it says sharing. So different Gospels are going to give us different pictures of the event exactly and how it goes. But the takeaway is going to be that Jesus knows exactly what Judas is going to do, and yet he lets it happen, right? Because the bigger picture is that Jesus is going to be arrested, put on trial. There's really not really a trial because he's guilty before he walks in, crucified on the cross. All that has to happen, and Judas kind of gets the ball rolling. So as unfortunate as it is, he plays a key part in this. But yeah, not such a good guy. But we're going to talk about something with him in just a minute. So talking about, again, the what. We got Passover meal, Lord's Supper, washing of the feet, Jesus commenting on someone who's going to betray him, and I love this one. Towards the end of the meal, and kind of like before they leave and go to Gethsemane, where Jesus prays, they talk about singing. So I love this. I'm guessing this is probably part of the Passover feast. Maybe they have some historical songs that they sang. I'm not 100% sure, but I love the thought of them sharing a meal, having the Lord's Supper instituted, and then singing as a group. And then I like to think about maybe what Jesus' voice would have sounded like. That's kind of cool. When we get to heaven, we'll be able to hear it because he'll be right there. So we'll know. Oh, yeah, that's what it sounds like. But again, a couple of Gospels mention this, so I love to include it because after the singing, it talks about how they go to the Mount of Olives. And then, of course, you guys know, because we talked about olives a couple weeks ago, that right at the base of the Mount of Olives is Gethsemane, is the garden. So there was singing, foot washing, food, a betrayer, and the Lord's Supper. All that's the what. So if we full pan it out, we know where. Upper room inside of a building in Jerusalem. This is funny. We know that when and why we're doing this is because why they're in the upper room is to remember Passover and celebrate that. And we talked about what Passover is, reaching all the way back to Exodus. And then we talked about picturing all of our key players, the most important one there in the middle, being in the room, in the upper room, and then all of the whats that go in it. So the different Gospels tell us different things. Some of them overlap, which is really cool. There was singing, foot washing, the betrayer, the meal, and the Lord's Supper. Okay, so that's it. That's the Bible lesson for today. But it's not a Bible lesson unless we talk about why. Why are we talking about this? Why is it so important? And why is it good for us to remember? So, kind of one of the biggest things is that, this is where the Lord's Supper is established. And it's so cool to think how Jesus did that so many years ago, 2,000 plus years ago now. And it's something that we're still doing today, and remembering his sacrifice and his wonderful, perfect life on the cross. So it's kind of cool that the way Jewish people can reach back to Exodus, we can reach back to Jesus and to this meal in the upper room. Just to think about how special this moment is for us, because again, it's something we do every single week. It's a place in a time that we turn our hearts to, an event that we turn our hearts to, so we can reflect just how amazing Jesus was and is, because he's still around. We just can't see him, but he's here. He's still here. And another thing, too, is this is Jesus' last night on earth. So sometimes people might think like, oh, if it was my last day on earth, my last night, what would I do? Maybe I'd eat a bunch of candy or a bunch of pizza. Maybe I would watch all my favorite movies and go out and find a bunch of dogs to pet because I love dogs. You just think about all these things that you would do if it was your last night and you really want to live it up. But this is important, guys, because Jesus is our example. And on Jesus' last night, he celebrated the Passover meal. He carried on a tradition, and he was with his friends, his apostles. He established kind of the new covenant, the new tradition for us. But here's the kicker. Here's what I want to put on your heart a little bit. And this is something I actually saw on social media, and it just blew me away to think about it like this. So I definitely want to share it with y'all. He washed feet of every one of his apostles, including this one, right? He humbled himself enough to wash every single apostle's feet, including the betrayer. So this is a big deal. If that's how Jesus spent his last night on earth, what does that say to us? How does that tell us what we should value And also, too, we never know when our last day on earth is going to be. You know, we're never guaranteed tomorrow. And so if this is our last day on earth, and it could be, how can we serve and how can we behave the way Jesus did? It's fine to eat candy. It's fine to enjoy pizza and pet all the dogs. I pet every single dog I see. I always ask first, but I totally pet them. But Jesus is giving us his priorities. This is what he did on his last night. He could have done anything he wanted. And this is what he chose to do. He chose to serve. He chose to set an example, to institute what's going to come next as far as the Lord's Supper goes. And even someone as unworthy as Judas had his feet washed by Jesus, which is incredible. Now, I want to leave you guys with this verse, because even though the foot washing example, we hear it in the book of John, Luke, I feel like, really tags home the way I feel like, I mean, Jesus is so many different things, right? But something really important that I kind of want us to focus in on this part of Jesus. So in the book of Luke, he talks about how, of course, during the meal, the apostles start to argue about who's the greatest among them. So let me just read this to you so you can hear what Jesus says. I moved my thing. It's going to be right here. Here it is. So a dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. And Jesus said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves." Here it is. He's about to lay it down. "For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is at the table? But I am among you as one who serves." Look at that. Beautiful. So Jesus, the person who controlled the creation of the universe, is saying, I am as one who serves. So if he's like that, then that's how we need to be as well. Wasn't that a great verse? A little great series of verses? Luke. Thanks, Dr. Luke, for giving us those words. So we're going to start to wind down a little bit. I hope you guys enjoyed the lesson of the upper room. Maybe you've never heard it called that before. Sometimes we'll call it the Last Supper, the Lord's Supper, Passover meal. This story kind of takes on some different titles, but we needed one for you, so it's upper room for us. So there's got to be a craft. Now, I dig deep on the internet to find you guys a good craft. So this one is in a language, I don't even know what it is. It could be French. Maybe it's French. But you guys, you don't need to know what it says. But basically, it's going to be a sheet that looks like this. So we got Jesus in the middle here, and all of the apostles. Let me sing them again. I'm not going to sing it again, guys. Come on. But what you do is you cut out the top here, cut out the bottom, color them. You could even write the names of the apostles on them. So then you're going to have two pieces, this back piece and then this front piece as well. And then you got some little flaps. So fold these guys back. And what you're going to do is glue them on the little rectangles here and here, so that after everything is colored, everything is glued, it's going to be able to stand up. Isn't that cool? Yeah, 3D. 3D. That's cool. Thank you, French craft. So enjoy making that and decorating your apostles. You can figure out which one you think is Judas and like give him a frowny face, or something like that. But I hope you enjoyed the lesson. After you is V. Ooh, that'll be fun. What are we going to do for V? I don't know, but it'll be great. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. And as always, talk to your parents about the Lord's Supper, about this event that happened in the upper room. Ask them maybe which account of this that they like the best out of the Gospels. My favorite is John. I think he has a really interesting writing style and gives lots of lovely adjectives in his, so his is my favorite. But ask your parents what they like, and think about all the different things, that happened in the upper room, and how they still affect us today, which is so cool. Enjoy your week. Have a lot of fun. And if you're back in school, hope you're enjoying it. I think we're all online maybe right now, but good luck with school this year. And you guys might have seen, we're going to start doing a Zoom Bible class. So I'm going to finish out the alphabet since we're literally on the home stretch. So we're going to finish this out, all the while starting the Zoom one as well. So we're going to be doing Bible lessons all over the place, right? YouTube, Zoom, here we come. So please continue to watch these and do the activities until the end, and then we'll see you guys on Zoom. It'll be fun. We'll have a lot of fun. So enjoy your day, enjoy the craft, and I'll see you next week when we tackle V.